There are some really awesome band directors that nobody knows of because they're in their own little neck of the woods and they're burning the house down and doing a great job.
If your program is strong, if you're doing the best you can, that's success. If you have kids loving music, that's success.
All right, welcome to the podcast. All right, so we've got kind of an untraditional podcast going today. My co-host is feeling a little under the weather, and we have a returning guest, Mr. Cole Hunt from East Tennessee. And if you are from Tennessee, there has been a lot of talk and conversation about TnMEA splitting from NAfME. So we're just going to kind of give our thoughts and go over a few things with that. So I guess we'll start with TnMEA voted last week to split from TnMEA to help dues with membership dues and lower the cost, and have really been focusing on it's for the rural directors to help with memberships. And I think 40% of the band directors in Tennessee are not affiliated with a regional association, and at least 25% in Middle Tennessee are not affiliated with MTSBOA. So do you have any numbers for ETSBOA off the top of your head?
I don't know. And that 40%, is that band directors or is that music educators?
I think he said it was instrumental.
Okay, so it is specifically. Okay.
Yeah, so I would think it would be that or orchestra too. I'm not sure how many rogue orchestra programs we have out there. I'm sure there's more than we know about.
I never even thought, are there any upset orchestra folks in the mix?
I don't know. If you're a disgruntled orchestra director, chime in.
Reach out.
Yeah.
Somewhere there's like a rural orchestra podcast that we don't know about.
That's our next collaboration project.
No, and I've been pretty fired up about it. And I've reached out to most of regional president and TnMEA president and all these people about it. My biggest thing is, and have you read all the NAfME TnMEA back and forth emails, like when they were kind of feuding over email?
I only got one from NAfME, and it was kind of the, hey, your state's wanting to do this, you'll lose this. And some of that stuff was like, I didn't even know that was offered.
Right.
So I think part of NAfME's problem, or it could just be me not doing my job, I didn't know what was available. I got a magazine.
Sure.
That sometimes I thumbed through, but I'm sure there's more that I should have known about, but I don't know if NAfME does the best job with, hey, this is all the stuff we have available.
Right. Well, and I think they're seen as like they're the national unifying agency, right? That's their biggest draw there. And I'll say I don't, in the back and forth. So there's a few emails that kind of shot back and forth. I think NAfME sent out the first one, kind of informing the full state membership that Tennessee had voted to leave, or they were planning on voting to leave. Now we had got an email like letting us know that there would be a vote or something, like they were planning on it. I think it was slipped in with a list of other things, Yeah. And I'll be honest, I don't care strongly about NAfME. And like you said, maybe it's on me. Maybe it's on NAfME that automatically I didn't go, oh no, my NAfME membership.
Yeah, I did not lose any sleep when I heard about it.
What I've been riled up about is the narrative that's pushed of, oh, look what a good thing we're doing for all of these poor rural band directors. when there hasn't been too much concern about the associations being of any use to the rural band directors or being open or accessible to rural band kids. And now we're being held up as a prop saying like, oh, we're doing such a nice thing. This is what has stopped them from joining. It's those NAfME dues. And rural directors that I talk to, that's not why they don't join. You know, they have their reasons not for joining, but it's not over NAfME. So to be used as like some kind of talking point for them to leave NAfME, because I don't think that's why they want to leave NAfME. I think it's a convenient thing to say, and it makes them seem very altruistic in their leaving of NAfME, but I don't think that's why they want to leave.
Yeah, they did say that is it like MTSBOA alone, and for those that are outside of Tennessee, Tennessee is divided into 3 regions: East, Middle, and West, and we just have the 3 divisions. So Middle Tennessee, which is what I'm a part of, sends like over $100,000 a year in NAfME dues from our association, which, you know, every 10 years, that's $1 million. So I can see, you know, I can see why that conversation came up, but sure. I think the main driving force that they're telling us is it's so the rural band directors can join. And I'm not going to say none of them are going to join because of this. I'm sure that this will take the burden off of some, but sure. I think most of the frustration is not over how much it costs to join our regional association.
Right. Well, and I would almost respect the narrative more, which, by the way, it wasn't the only one. You know, when the TnMEA email went out that said like, here's why we're leaving, you know, after NAfME had sent one saying like, please don't leave. Here's why we're leaving.
I know some directors got the NAfME email before the TnMEA email. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah,
okay.
I did. Okay. Because I think what had happened was they're planning this vote, at least to my knowledge, and by all means, I hope one of them wants to jump on here and give us the straight narrative of it. But yeah. I think they were voting. So it's just the presidents of East, Middle, West for vocal general band. So that's like the 9 people plus the TnMEA board that votes on this.
Yeah.
And so they were planning to leave. This gets to NAfME, which I'm sure through various means. I would hope NAfME kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah.
But so I think the NAfME email did come out first, and then TnMEA kind of had to defend why they were voting to do this. It seems like the vote had pretty much been decided that they were going to do it. But again, I'm not even too concerned about that. But then we get this list of talking points. Well, here's why we're leaving. And one of the big things was basically like, we believe that you should get to choose. You should not be forced to join this association just for your kids to get to do events, right? That was one of the big talking points. And then the other was this, we're helping out rural and urban bands. And that seems to be the one that's really been doubled down on. And I'll tell you, after that one went out, that's when I started emailing saying like, please stop engaging in this narrative saying that, you know, poor bands aren't joining because they're just too poor to join. And I will say my regional president was very receptive, like very good conversation with her that I really felt heard and listened to. And that and talking to the TnMEA rural chair, I really felt listened to. Some others not so much, but I don't know. They seem to really have doubled down on that. And again, I think the real reason is they're tired of paying money to NAfME because they have to pay dues, like they pay association dues on top of collecting our dues, right?
I would assume so. I'm sure that they'll take money any way they can.
Yeah. And maybe it's that they feel they could better use our money, you know, for us.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, fine, just say that. Just say,
Yeah.
look, we're paying all this money to NAfME. We don't see it really going to use for our members. So we'd like to redirect efforts and keep it low. Fine. Do that.
Yeah.
But don't hold up the little farm-bound band directors and say, oh, but they need our help. For 10 cents a day, we could keep these directors in the association.
Sarah McLachlan starts playing in the background.
Yeah. Because that's not the case. And I'll tell you, I have been a rural director who really drags others to the ETSBOA meetings and says, we need a voice here. Come to this meeting. Come be part of it. And some that are very adamant about, oh, why do we stay? You know, we're getting nothing out of this. Why do we stay? Our kids, you know, and our kids can't get into these things. And I don't know that I'll be the guy dragging anyone to the meetings anymore. It's going to be hard to drag myself to the meetings anymore.
Yeah. Once again, Cole, you're in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
I'm in Middle Tennessee, and I've kind of done the same thing. I've kind of I've let my regional president kind of know my thoughts and feelings, and the TBA president is also a part of MTSBOA, and I know we're throwing all kinds of acronyms out here, but we have all kinds of like regional associations.
This is a very niche area.
Yes. Yeah.
Tennessee Band Director Associations.
Yeah. We have the TBA, we have the TnMEA, we have the MTSBOA. But I feel like everybody is receptive, and at least the conversation is open. And I think as more of us start to let our associations know, hey, this is what's irritating me, X, Y, and Z. Any good leadership will take that to heart and at least try to make changes. And, you know, associations don't change overnight. You know, I'm not expecting everything to get fixed tomorrow. And in the midst of all this, at least in Middle Tennessee, the mid-state band audition music just went live this morning, and the member registration just went live yesterday, and we had our first meeting on this last weekend. So I mean, everything is all happening all at once in Middle Tennessee. So they're under a lot of pressure, and I kind of threw them a curveball with my stuff. But one point that I made, and I know I'm on the Rural Band Director podcast, but I kind of have one foot in each corner. You know, I do have a larger program, but it is a very core program. And then I cut my teeth in rural and small programs. You know,
Sure.
I have always worked in a Title I school, so I'm always going to fight for those directors. But one point that I made was, you know, when I first started teaching, I had to teach 5th grade through 8th grade all at the same time in a cafeteria for 20 minutes, 3 days a week.
Yeah.
I didn't have many 7th and 8th graders because they didn't want to learn how to hold the instrument and play. You know, the retention level was almost zero. And that just can't compete with, you know, some of these middle school bands that have 2 or even 3 band directors and, you know, a perfect schedule, and, you know, they take 3 bands to concert festival, and it's just, I think that's what's keeping all of these smaller programs from going, because there's no way you can hold a candle to some of those programs.
I do think, from having talked to you, I think what's interesting is that how Middle Tennessee, how the association does work a bit differently as far as events compared to East Tennessee. And I don't know what's happening in West Tennessee. We should probably ask someone what's going on out there. But like East Tennessee, we have 4 all East bands, 2 all East orchestras, which I think is more ensembles than you all do for that level, right? So it seems, you know, for you all, it's an even higher bar to get kids into these events because it's less seats for them to have.
Yeah.
I will say I'm basically in ETSBOA for junior clinic. We have 3 junior clinics that are, you know, upper, middle, lower. So that event is fairly accessible now.
And that's your regional honor band.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the highest, for a middle school kid in ETSBOA, that's the highest thing they could do is one of those 3 junior clinics. And I find those events to be pretty accessible. For middle area, we have 3 different bands. So you can get some decent players into that bronze band who may not be a hot shot, with doing 3 hours of private lessons a week or anything, but just a good, decent player can get in there. Now to get those top gold band chairs does take some doing, and I've had kids get that from here. They've had to work their butts off to get it, but I see accessibility there. I think for your region, it sounds like accessibility is it's a much bigger issue.
Far as tell me again how many bands you had in East, or how many junior high, middle school bands you have in East Tennessee?
So we have, there's 3 junior clinics. Each one of them is allowed to operate as they see fit. So like the lower area does a 7th grade band and 8th grade band separately, and they may still have 9th graders. I think they may still, because for a while we had freshman bands in the junior clinics. And middle area just does 3 bands, gold, silver, bronze. I'm not really sure how upper area does it. They may be similar to middle, but we're all allowed to kind of each area caucuses and decides how they want to run those clinics to best fit their kids. So it's a little closer to being districts. Yeah. I'd like to see it split up more, honestly, but so Middle Tennessee has 2 junior bands, right?
Yeah. And we have just 2 and 1 orchestra. That's it.
Yeah.
And if anybody from Alabama is listening, I would love to get your input in on this. The middle section of Tennessee has more enrollment, band director membership than the entire state of Alabama. And Alabama, if I checked, has 8 or 9 districts. And Middle Tennessee is its own region. Tennessee is not broken up into districts for anybody that's outside of Tennessee. And that has been a conversation for a while, because I have to drive an hour and a half to get to any of my association meetings, events, whatever, which is, 3 hours a day of driving.
Yeah, same for us. Everything's a drive. But, that's fine. I've come to terms with that we're driving there where we go. No, it's interesting. Well, and at our ETSBOA meeting we had past weekend, the TnMEA rep did say, like, well, we realize that leaving NAfME, you all could vote as an association to leave TnMEA. That it's a slippery slope, and then immediately threw out, but that means your kids couldn't have Allstate, right? And so basically, like, you could leave, but we're holding this event hostage. And I really think, because have you heard they're proposing a middle school Allstate?
I have heard that it's already a done deal. They just haven't pulled the curtain back yet. And I've also heard that it's going to be moved to our Allstate, or state conference, whatever, is going to be moved from April to January. Yeah, which is when Middle Tennessee's events happen, which means ours is going to have to be pushed forward. And East Tennessee, you guys audition in January still, right?
Right.
So yours is really going to be pushed forward.
Yeah. Well, that was thrown out. I think the way it was presented to us is like, well, middle school Allstate, if that's something you guys want, and we were asking like logistical questions, knowing they don't know that much, and it's it's the will of the people, which I said, since when has it been the will of the people here? Yeah. No, I kind of did get the feeling that it was something. I think middle school Allstate is the chess move they're making for when all the middle school directors realize, why are we in TnMEA?
Yeah.
Like, we could, if we were allowed to just be regional members, we could do our junior clinic and not worry about it. So I think they're seeing that as like, well, we've got to have that to hold over them, because clearly they were very, very willing to hold all state over the high school directors.
And I don't know the numbers for sure. I would think that there are way more middle school band directors than high school band directors.
One would assume.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder though, because when they were talking about middle school all state, and here's what I did take away from the ETSBOA meeting. I was really encouraged by things the members were saying, because when this conversation happened, it was a lot of logistical questions that middle school directors automatically think of. Are we keeping middle schoolers overnight in Nashville? You know, that's a prospect a lot of us wouldn't even.
In a big hotel.
Getting clearance from school boards to take middle schoolers overnight is a whole other thing too. You know, some people from Hamilton County pointed out like that can be quite an undertaking that their board may not even go for. And so
I know for my school board, if I have an overnight trip and I have just one boy and one girl, I have to have a female chaperone that stays overnight. And I'm the only one at my school, so I'm going to have to pay somebody, or, you know, comp a room at Opryland Hotel for 3 or 4 nights. You know, it will get expensive really quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive regardless. Like, that's just expensive to get out there. And that was brought up too. Someone else actually brought up that if I have to pay a chaperone to be there, and then someone brought up, you know, the endurance, how many rehearsal hours can you really put on middle school kids for this kind of thing? The smartest suggestion I heard was that maybe it just be a day, you know, that they get there in the morning, maybe have the music sent ahead of time, do their concert that evening so that they are free to go. And that kind of frees the directors up from having to stay with them, that kind of thing. Even then, if I had kids make middle school all state, I don't think I'd even tell them about it, because my kids couldn't afford it. They just couldn't. And my budget already kind of exists on what we scrape together and what we can do. And that would be a big undertaking for 1 or 2 kids.
Yeah. And I love my middle school students to death. I don't want to be responsible for them for 72 plus hours in a row. Right.
And somebody in our group from they had taught in North Carolina, where I guess they have kind of a middle school all-state thing. And he said by the time they get to their senior year of high school, they take on this been there, done that mentality. So they kind of get burnt out, and it's not as big a deal to them anymore. The most telling thing was someone asked the TnMEA rep, have you polled the middle school directors to see if this is something they even want? And the answer was no. So,
well, at least the answer wasn't yes. That would have been an interesting.
Yeah. Oh, right. I wouldn't have remembered. But then it was kind of presented as, well, but when it does come down the line, everybody's going to have to get their ducks in a row for this. And that's kind of how we were. I don't know how long Mid-States had freshmen in their high school clinic. Has that kind of always been a thing?
It happened somewhere in the time where I went from Middle Tennessee to East Tennessee, because when I left Smith County, we had 7, 8, 9 bands. We had 3 of those, and we had 10, 11, 12 bands, 3 of those. So we still had 6 bands total. And then I went to East Tennessee, and then when I came back and was back in Middle Tennessee, everything was restructured. So now we have 2 7, 8 bands, 2 9 and 10 bands, 2 11 and 12 bands. So it's still 6 bands, but there's just 2 for each grade level.
Yeah. We restructured in East Tennessee because we had all East was 4 bands, just top to bottom. And it was only sophomores through seniors. 9th grade bands were part of junior clinics. The thought being, they're in high school now, they're having to keep up with the marching band schedule. So we'll give them a few more scales, a little tougher piece, but we'll give them their own band. And I liked that. I thought that was appropriate. It had more kids playing. The way we restructured, I heard one very wise director say, we don't have 4 all East bands anymore. We have 2 bands that just move up every year. And that is really how it works. We cut a lot of kids out of that clinic.
Yep.
Also, it could match getting freshmen to All-State, right?
All-State. Yep.
So if everything's catering to All-State and the All-State players and the directors that can afford to go to All-State, is that what the association is telling us the primary purpose of what they do is? It's to cater to this top tier of player, and everything else has to be structured around that.
Yeah. There's a lot more than the 400 kids that make the All-State bands and All-State orchestras and all of those groups, and they're fantastic groups, and I don't want to take anything away from them, but we have way more kids that deserve better than, oh, you didn't make All-State, better luck next year.
I think obviously those groups are top notch. I think it's great that those kids get those experiences, get to work with those conductors. I just think it begs a philosophical question. Is this music education group have the goal shifted to providing opportunities, right, for every single child, every child having good music education opportunities? Is it about that? Or is it about whining and dining these top tier directors and getting certain people's kids in front of them?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the accessible to every child, that's not something we came up with. That's something that's been told to us.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well,
I'm being very reserved in this podcast because I don't want to throw anybody under a bus, and I don't want to mention any names. And we kind of talked about that before we got in here, but
no, and
yeah,
I do think though, I think it's important that our side of it be expressed and be heard in all this, because we know the other side will be heard, right?
Yes,
that side's always heard, so you might as well express. I think another thing
your kid didn't make it because they weren't good enough. Period. Teach them better.
Well, right. That's what it comes down to. And I think, but I think what they don't get then from our perspective is okay, well, if these events aren't for me, but you're telling me I need to be here, I need to pay the dues, I need to be in this group. Well, why? I could throw my own event, or I could get me and my, which again, in East Tennessee, when I was on the episode before, we talked about TsSBOA. This is another
acronym.
Yes. Tennessee Secondary Schools Band Directors Association, which that group's been around 40 years now, of these band directors who felt like, and it's not always been rural heavy. It is now. For a while, there were some, Knox County directors in there and stuff, but it's kind of evolved into this, but it's always been these directors who thought, well, we want as many kids as we can to get this clinic experience. And it's not that it's just every kid that shows up. We do an audition. They have to know some scales. They have to do some sight reading. There is some screening and some preparation and some expectation, but they still get to have a good clinic experience.
Yeah, which I think is the pinnacle of being in a band program is playing with people that are not in your school, that just raise the band experience. And one thing that I like that East Tennessee does is they have school representation. So every school that auditions a student, at least one kid is in one of those bands, or is in not in every band, but somebody is representative of that school. Middle Tennessee does not have that.
Yeah, and as I understand it, Middle Tennessee has voted that down in the past, right? That's been up for a vote before.
It has been discussed numerous times, but I don't think it's ever come to a vote. I don't even think it makes it to the membership voting.
Oh,
I think it stops before it gets to there. I could be wrong, but
yeah. No, and I've had we've sent kids from Scott County on representation. My daughter went as a representative, and the way it works is, so your school didn't get anyone in. Well, the director picks one that auditioned, and they sit in the bottom chair of that section. So of the of the red band, right? Not the bottom chair of the blue band, bottom chair of the bottom band.
The lowest available chair. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you'll see that, like, well, the numbers are a little skewed. You know, the top band has 6 bass clarinets and this one has 7. So clearly somebody sent one on representation. But that kid gets that clinic experience. They go back. Now, I've heard, and I've kind of seen this too, the kids that go and do that, they'll normally, if they're not a senior, they'll gun harder the next year to try to make it in. And they'll kind of fire other kids up about it. Like, hey, we got to go do this. And I want my buddies to go do this with me. So let's start working for it. It's a great thing. I'd like to see East Tennessee extend that down to the middle schools, because that doesn't seem to be consistent that we do that there. And I don't think there would be any harm to it. There's a lot of little bitty middle school programs that could benefit from that same thing.
Yeah. Because especially for the rural, you know, my high school band for the first half of my career so far was under 35 kids. I think I may have gotten, 38 or something, but never over 40. And, when you're playing a band of 100 and all of them can play, like and Mike has said that on his questions that we do, like it was playing just a concert B flat with 100 people. And all of a sudden it's just like, holy cow, what is this? And it's the spark that can change a culture for a program. And that was one of my big points in the concerns that I addressed to Middle Tennessee was, one kid makes it in, they come back and they tell everybody about how awesome it was. And then you have more kids auditioning, which is more money. And, you might get 2 kids in next year. But if it's year after year and nobody makes it, it's really hard to keep plugging for it.
Yeah. Lisa Burden, who's somebody you should talk to. She's at Tullahoma, but she came from a rural program and taught, and very familiar with this world. But she has this great story about the first time she went to an honor band and she heard a suspended cymbal for the first time because her school didn't have one. And she like jumped out of her chair. It was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I think, what a neat thing. And she said from that point she was hooked. There's future band directors sitting in some of these little programs too,
I never saw a bassoon until I saw a regional band.
Yeah. I heard someone too.
What is that? Yeah.
We were looking for middle area one year. They were wanting to maybe make the top group more like an elite wind ensemble, right? So really parse down the instrumentation and the very, very best kids, right?
Yeah.
And a man I greatly admire, Craig Valentine, who taught band for many years, I think all exclusively in rural areas. He kind of horned his way onto the committee that was setting the instrumentation. And so they're trying to figure out what's going to be in this top group. And they wanted one bassoon. And he said, when I send my bassoon player from Horace Maynard Middle School, he never gets to play with any other bassoon players. So for this weekend, even if he's in the top, I'd like him to play with another bassoon player. And I think that's the perspective of those directors and those kids that you miss when you're looking at, well, let's just make this a really exclusive thing.
I'd never thought of that. That's brilliant. Yeah. We have some good ideas. We have to think outside the box a lot, But I do feel if there is a silver lining in all this, I do feel like other people are starting to figure that out. People that are making the decisions are starting to realize, hey, there's some really darn good teaching going on out here that we could learn from. TnMEA has started a rural band chair, and he was actually on one of our previous episodes. He runs the Tennessee Bandmasters Association podcast, the Bandstand podcast. David Adelit, I don't feel I can name drop him, has done a really good job reaching out to a lot of folks and attending some of the clinics that these smaller programs are putting on. So I do feel like it's moving in the right direction as a whole.
I think I'm in, and I'm going to be on the rural committee for ETSBOA.
Okay.
Yeah, which when I was asked to be on it, I let the ETSBOA president know. I said, I'm in a really hateful place with the association right now. And she said, well, I think that viewpoint would help. So I was very upfront, I'm not coming in sunshine and roses about it. And I really would, when you talk about like representation policies, things like that, that kind of stuff will keep me in the group. One of the big things, again, where I was encouraged just listening to the membership talk on these things, East Tennessee, the directors were very concerned that, okay, if we have a middle school all-state, we don't want to change that we have 3 junior clinics and that we have all these bands. We don't want to parse, make one big super East Tennessee junior clinic to fit into this. We want to keep things as they are. And we were kind of pushing that as like, that's the top priority. We feel like we're doing a pretty good job with accessibility there. So we don't want that to change. My fear is that when the rubber hits the road, are we going to be told, well, you have to change to meet this? Because all state middle school band is going to be now what we have to aim for.
Yeah. And I think there's value in when you're pushing region band to your students saying, one of us gets to go to Nashville or Chattanooga or wherever that convention's held and stay in a hotel for a couple nights.
Yeah.
One of you is, because then there's drive to be that top, if anything, just in your band, it changes the whole mentality. Thankfully, I've had enough kids that can get private lessons to where I usually have 1 or 2 kids slip in each year. So we'll see if it still happens this year. But I know in the first part of my career, none of my kids got private lessons. I'd have a couple here and there that would take some occasionally, but never regularly.
Yeah, I am largely the private lessons teacher for my kids. I do have some nice colleagues that jump in if I have a hot shot and they're close enough nearby. But, I know some directors where they're it for miles and miles.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got kids that can't afford heat in the winter, they're not shelling out $30 a week for a trumpet lesson. It's just not happening.
Yeah. And what a lot of people suggest to me, because I live in a college town, Tennessee Tech is here. Oh, well, you have Tech right there. It should be easy. A lot of the college professors don't want to give lessons to middle school students.
Sure.
And it could be workload. It could be they don't want to deal with that age group, and it's their job. They can do whatever they want. But just because you live in a college town doesn't mean hey, all of a sudden we have private lessons. And I don't know. I feel like in all of this, the middle school directors are kind of getting the short end of the stick, and then the rural middle school directors are getting the short end of the stick. So,
yeah. But nothing new there. We're pretty used to that.
Yeah. Our bands aren't going to BOA regionals. So
right. Well, and I think you and Mike should do an episode on like dispelling myths about rural band directors, because I think there's this perception that, well, the people in this job must be in that job because they can't get a better one. Or, that, or if they just taught better, that band would be better. Now, while, there is a point where you should know how to teach music to get X amount of results. There's a lot of people, really good teachers with really bad circumstances, and they stay there in spite of those circumstances and make something that if you knew where it started from. I heard a little band up in Kentucky that for a long time they had no feeder, so the director had to start the kids in 9th grade. Okay, so your beginning band is like your 9th graders, and so think about, okay, but they're playing with the high school band, what a challenge that would be. And then when you hear them at Concert Festival and they're not a huge group, you're like, oh man, what a nice sound. And knowing how much work had to go in to make that happen. Yeah. And I think it's just, we have to define success differently. And I don't think it matches this old school, big old region, all-state model for a lot of us, which begs the question, do we stay in it? You let me read your statement that you sent to MTSBOA, and the most telling thing that stuck with me is where you had added up the money you spent for like those events. And I was like, oh, I've never really thought about like how much money have I put into this, and then what was the experience payout?
Yeah.
I'm really going to think about that this year.
Yeah. And in those costs were, for instance, concert festival, I think registration was $200. The sub for that day was like $120. The bus for that day was probably about $120. I don't remember. But a lot of times if they can't find a sub for the bus driver, I also have to pay for the sub. So I mean, it's like $500-$600
Wow.
for me to leave the parking lot to go to concert festival. Thankfully, my band's small enough to where all the instruments fit under the bus. When the day comes when I have to get a U-Haul, I'm going to have a parent drive or ask somebody, beg somebody to, ride with me or whatever. But yeah, it adds up quickly. And
yeah, when I spoke to David Adelet, is that how you say the?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I spoke to him, I'd mentioned that too, that, they're raising, despite all the concern for we poor schools, they're raising, at least in East Tennessee, like every student fee, every school fee has gone up. Solo and ensembles up to $10 now. Concert festivals like $300. So a rural director who looks at that, they're not only thinking the $300, they're thinking, okay, that plus I've got to drive further than every school coming, so I'm going to have a more expensive bus bill. We don't take a trip here where we don't give kids money to eat on because we know we have kids that won't have it, right?
Yeah.
So I think a rural director, any trip like that, they're looking at it as double, triple the cost for them to get their kids there and have that experience. And then at the end of the day, is it going to be a good experience too? But no, the thing that really shocked me, solo and ensemble fees, that seems high.
Yes.
And one of our regions has I think Upper, they do like a masterclass option where and it used to be like I think $12. So it was like $6 and you pay double for $12. And you basically get like a lesson with whoever the judge is. Like, I guess if you're working on like a college audition or something. And that's gone up to $20. So it's basically just like, organized lessons or something. But I'll give credit. Apparently that Upper region, East Tennessee solo and ensemble, they get like 1,000 kids through or something. Like it's a crazy big event for them. The others don't do that well, but I'll give credit where it's due. They seem to do it well.
Yeah.
We'll see if they do so well with those fees though.
Yeah. I know with Middle Tennessee, it's $10 for a 5-minute slot. It may have changed to a 7-minute slot. Either way, the math, if it's a 5-minute slot, that's $120 per room.
Yeah.
Per hour, per event.
Do you all pay the judges? Do you know?
We get a little
Okay.
cut. I mean, they're not banking $120. I mean, the cost of the medals come out of that. There are some expenses to come out of that, but I would be willing to bet most of that's going, into the MTSBOA account.
Yeah. Which I've never done a solo and ensemble for ETSBOA. My I guess it was probably my first year teaching. Me and the other director I was working with, we looked at it and we're like, well, we'd really like to go, but we can't afford a bus to take them. So we put our own together. I think you came up and judged for it one year.
I was going to say, yeah, you had some weird guy come up and help judge. Yeah.
Yeah. And which we do pay our judges. I was just curious. We do pay our judges that come in. Now we have some like area music teachers that will volunteer time to do it just, because they like us, I guess. But we do that on the cheap. We charge the kids $3 a kid. And like, there's a school fee of like $20 or something like that. But we get it done. I feel like they get the same experience. They get a certificate, a medal that I'm sure is not as nice as the medals at these other events.
Most of the kids lose them anyways. I mean, there are the few that, wear them, put them on their Letterman jacket or whatever.
Yeah.
I bet you none of my personal children have any idea where their medals are.
Yeah. But I would say for anything like that, if you're in a situation where you can't afford, think about, okay, could I do this? During COVID, we did an honor band here because they had all been canceled. We did one. We were safe as we could be with it, but just kind of auditioned our own kids out, did a little county honor band. I announced it at the concert as the first and last Scott County honor band because we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
But there are ways you can give your kids these experiences, or just get with the schools in the same situation near you and do that, or find groups like the Twin Lakes guys out in Middle Tennessee, the TSBOA out in East Tennessee. And then again, we've got to talk to somebody in West Tennessee and see what they're doing out there.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got to find that connection.
Yeah.
Maybe David can help us with that. Man, there was something I was going to say. Oh, with the Solon Ensemble, you can just partner up with another director and you grade each other's soloist or ensembles. It doesn't have to be anything wild and crazy. A lot of bands do that for concert festival preparation. They have like a symphonic band camp or whatever, and the directors basically switch bands and work with the other band for a few hours, and each is benefiting the other, so you don't necessarily have to pay each other, and it's a win-win situation.
Yeah. But again, learning to troubleshoot these kind of situations, or these smaller, rural friendly associates, these have grown up out of the larger associations not meeting that need.
Yeah.
That those things aren't options for us, or we have bad experiences with those, that you start looking for other ways to solve it. So for me, I guess with this whole split, where I'm sitting is, I feel like they've got something to prove. They need to prove why these rural bands should stay.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's on us. I feel like we've been showing up.
Yeah. One of the directors I've been talking to, their words were, they need our membership fees so they can run their events. It's like, oh,
right.
Ouch. But I mean, if you don't have any kids make region band, you get slaughtered at concert festival. You can't do Solon Ensemble.
Yeah.
Facts are facts.
Yeah.
I know with East Tennessee, when I was in Cumberland County, for whatever reason, I was in the lower caucus for East Tennessee, and I was in a different time zone. And their Solon Ensemble was always on like a Thursday afternoon. And I was like, guys, I will never make it. There's no way, because, I have to wait for the bus to finish their route. And then by the time I get down there and the time change, like, you guys are done. So it's,
Yeah. Scott County's in a similar situation. We are middle area, despite being on the Kentucky state line and almost in central time. And we always have to drive. We're the only ones typically who bring a bus to junior clinic, and we'll have like 4 or 5 kids on a full school bus. And I've had band directors like, well, why'd you bring a bus for that many? Because they wouldn't be here otherwise. Their parents don't necessarily have the means to bring them down here, and then spend the whole day down here, an hour away from home, and then come back the next day to it. Whereas a lot of the other bands are, 30 minutes at most. Now, that being said, my other option is to drive like clear out to Johnson City. So I'm fine being in middle area.
Yeah.
But
again, I don't think it would have been any shorter going the middle route, because it was still a time change, and it was, an hour versus an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. But the splits aren't perfect, but
no,
it is what it is.
Again, that's why I think more districts would be good. And I know you and I have both been acting as band Martin Luther, nailing our 95 theses to the door here. And when I read what you proposed, I was impressed you were brave enough to suggest the districts, because that was one I had thought, but I was like, I'm not even going to throw it out there. They won't think about it.
Yeah.
But I really do think if you look at and I didn't know Alabama was like that, but Kentucky's the same way.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of districts, and KMEA, they seem pretty happy up there. Like they seem happy with their districts, happy with the NAfME affiliation. So I don't know. I don't think severing ties with NAfME, which is what this whole thing is about, right? I don't think that is going to be the cure-all that just fixes everything, other than it keeps some money in the state a little more than it did before.
Yeah. Only time will tell. We'll have a follow-up podcast 1 year from today.
Yes.
And see what all changed.
And after we've explained why we've been banned from these organizations, we'll give secondhand reports of how they're doing.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So I've been kicked out of my association and looking for another one. I'm ready to sign with any team. But, well, do you have any other last thoughts, Cole? This has been a nice.
I think we summed it up. We aired our grievances.
Yeah. We'll see if it falls on deaf ears or if it comes from any of it. So if you are a rural band director, go ahead, Cole.
No, I'll say this. As upset as I am, and my wife told me the other night, I love you. I can't hear about this anymore because I've just been ranting. But as upset as I am about all of it, I really would love to see these big associations rise up and better serve these communities. I can't think of anybody that wouldn't want that. Sadly, I'm at a pretty cynical point where I don't know that it can happen, but I would love to see it happen.
Yeah. And then it could be us, was the catalyst for that, because we nailed those things to the wall.
That's right.
No, I'm not taking any credit for the stuff that's happened. I'm just voicing my opinion. Something has clicked in my career, and I'm just not afraid to speak my opinions anymore, which probably should have happened a lot sooner, but better late than never.
Yeah.
So, well, if you are a rural band director in Tennessee and you want to weigh in on this, you're not going to hurt our feelings if you agree or disagree. If you are a rural band director in another state and you're kind of feeling the same way, let us know. The ruralbanddirector@gmail.com. This is officially the first episode of our second season, so we're going to start having more hosts on and everything, and look forward to meeting a lot of you guys. So until next time, thanks again, Cole, for coming in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, feel free to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Rural Band Director.
And if you have topics that you'd like for us to cover, contact us through email at theruralbanddirector@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening.